You're listening to the 40 Thrive podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of 40 Thrive. It's election day. So much is at stake for our country and its people. But as you know, this is not a political podcast. So for today, my plan was to give you a little comic relief by inviting on two hilarious, outspoken, brilliant women. Frances Callier and Angela V. Shelton are real-life best friends who met at the world-famous Second City Theater and became what we all know as Frangela. You may recognize them from NBC's Bring the Funny or I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. They were featured on the Oprah Show on the Best Standups in America episode. They are well known for their commentary on VH1's Best Week Ever and hilarity on the big screen in the hit films He's Just Not That Into You and Slow Learners. They're also recurring fan favorites on Hulu's Quick Draw. But what I thought would be a funny, entertaining conversation, and it is, but it became so much more. We talk mental health, quote unquote cancel culture, why Frances wants to confront Val Kilmer, and one of the most important questions you could possibly ask yourself. Our chat is lively, it's super fun, and it's a huge opportunity to learn and grow. Something as a woman nearing 50, I hope to do each and every day. So here we go. Let's get into my conversation with Frangela. Frangela, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Thank you for having us.
So you guys were, as my youngest would say, shipping your names together way before it was actually cool, before Brangelina even existed, weren't you?
Yes, we were. And that's because people always got us confused. They'd be like, which one are you? You Frances or you Auntie Fran?
People actually said it by, they go, Frangela. And we were just like, let's just do that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's simpler.
You both met at Second City. Take us back. I would love to hear both sides of this story of how you met.
Well, Angela, has done all the stages at Second City, and she moved to Chicago and moved into my building. And that building was a building where a bunch of artists lived in it. A couple blocks from the theater, you could just pop in and out because you're doing rehearsals, you're teaching, you're doing all of that stuff. We meet on the stairs. She says, hey, you want to go see a movie one day? I said, sure. We go to the movies, we sit down, the lights go down, and we just turn to each other and start talking. And girl, we have not stopped since.
No.
Do you remember what movie it was?
I do not. It wasn't Red Planet, but that was in that era in Chicago. Because I remember Red Planet because that's a really bad movie if you haven't seen it. Like really, really egregiously bad.
It's Val Kilmer as a janitor in space.
Oh.
And it's really stupid and bad. They get onto an abandoned spacecraft and like somebody picks up something in there and eats it. You're like, are you crazy? Like it's just like insane. And at one point, Frances literally, and the theater was pretty packed, just went, oh, hell no. Come on. Hell no. And everybody laughed and it was fun.
That's amazing.
And I made the Val Kilmer promise, which is if I ever in my life meet that man, I am going to demand that $13.95 back from his ass with interest, Jackie.
Because we can't get that time back.
You'd be happy to know. Here's Val. No, I'm just kidding.
That would be so
where's my money?
Right? If this were a talk show, I would have had the producers go and get Val, and who would give you a big check for $13.95.
Oh, totally. That's what I need. That's what I need.
It's healing. It would be healing.
I'm on it. We'll have you back for that one. So you became friends. At what point did you decide we have to do comedy together? Did it kind of happen at the same time, or how did that work out?
What happened was Angela got cast and created a show called Hey Moni, an animated show. She wrote the character Bible, she did all this stuff, and they needed somebody to play her best friend. And she goes, well, how about my best friend, who also happens to be an improviser? Yeah. Because they had scripts, but they also wanted you to go in and improvise and have conversations. So we auditioned on the phone together, and the director, producer loved us. And that's how we actually professionally started working together. We got a job. And that show lasted 5 years. It was on Oxygen and BET, got won awards. So it's great. I remember turning to her in Boston one day and saying, hey, what if this is our lives? I'll never forget it. We were in the booth, and I turned to her and I said, what if in our lives, I can talk to my best friend all day long and call that my job?
Wow. And look at where you are.
Exactly.
What if this was our lives?
Exactly.
Right there. You were much younger at the time, but this is a lesson right here that if we all stopped for a second, if you're listening right now, just stop for a second. You can pause us if you need to and ask yourself, what if this was my life?
Exactly.
And throw whatever it is that you want out there. So how long have you been friends?
23 years.
23 years. So it was basically the 90s, the late 90s,
I was
where you
very
got
young.
started.
I was very, very young. Like 8.
You were 8.
Like that,
Yeah, I thought you were still swaddled. You were like a tiny baby.
I was. That's a prodigy. So.
Excellent. Now, how has your relationship changed over the years? Because I just asked in the 40 Thrive community how your friendships have changed. There's no lack of opinions in there. So to have a friendship of 23 years, babies, marriages,
death, yeah.
How has it changed?
This is the thing. It doesn't feel like 23 years. We both have friends, obviously other friends. And I have my OGs, my original gangsters. Like I have a friend that I've had since I was 3, a friend I've had since I was like 9 or 10. The circumstances of our lives have changed, but the relationships haven't changed. We have different things going on, but I think that there are other relationships where people, and maybe that's because of the work we do, because we also work together, that our changes seem to happen sort of together. There are people you grow apart from because you move, they go in a path that's very different. They go in the foreign service or something, but generally speaking, we've been in this community, this sort of improv performer community since we were in our early 20s. So, and Frances, since she was in high school. So a lot of those things haven't changed. I think that it's the thing that I would say keeps us sort of, I'll say youthful, if not weirdly immature.
Potato.
Is each other, right? Like that we have the same laughs, the same things, and we just have different circumstances. Like now it isn't as cool to go out and get drunk, and not just because of COVID. Like right. You feel it differently.
Here's the thing, the maturation of our friendship, because it has to, all friendships, I believe, go through a maturation point, a change, a deepening. A friend of mine, I posted a picture of my husband and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And a friend asked, well, where's Angela? Because Angela's always there.
I'm always in the picture. It was too hot.
It was too, number one, my 1950s rent-controlled apartment has not enough air conditioning for Angela. And we have a standing agreement, which is you can cancel. I don't care if Obama's up in this house. If it's too hot, Angela's not coming.
I'm not coming.
Okay. Even for Obama, though?
Oh, yeah. It's actually a running joke with us. It's like, how everything sounds really good until that night.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
It's like, imagine, you get invited to the White House for a private dinner with the president and the first lady, the ones, Obama. And we always joke that we'd be excited right up until 2 hours before we were supposed to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think they could reschedule?
Do not make Friday plans on a Monday. Just don't do it. So in your friendship, though, I don't know a time in my 49 years that I've seen people so divisive. I saw you quote somewhere, Angela, that you both have very different opinions. Now, politically, I know you're on the same side based on the comedy that you're doing, but what kinds of things would be potentially divisive for other friendships that you have found a way to navigate? Are there things that you're just completely on opposite sides?
I'd say there's more of an ebb and a flow. What we've noticed is if one of us is really angry about something, a lot of times the other person it isn't or isn't as angry. And then it sort of flows.
Yes. Can I add to that, Angela?
Mm-hmm.
It gives the other person the freedom to not have to attach mentally to the anger.
Yeah.
Being able to have two of us, you actually kind of get a proxy in a weird way who can go off and deal with your problem. Because a problem for Frangela, one of us can go deal with it. And then emotionally, if one of us is in the place where it hasn't hit us, I'm going to raise my hand. That's me.
Frances is much slower to anger.
I'm very slow.
Much slower. But when she gets there, people have no idea.
Okay.
You better watch it.
When Frances gets mad, I stand back and go, y'all about to see why I'm not the problem. Here we go. Here we go. Have you ever seen a rabbit squirrel? You're about to. Go.
Yeah.
Look, there are things we disagree about. This is not an extreme example, but we are very different people. And although we share a lot of things, we share a lot of, I would say, core principles or values or whatever, there's things like, for example, Frances, keeping on the heat theme, Frances has this problem with getting air conditioning units put in to windows.
Well, okay.
It's some sort of allergy.
I see a theme here.
Where, it is. This has been going on since the beginning.
I can't defend this. I can't defend it.
I don't know what the problem is, but like this happened. How many years ago was this? Like 15, 18 years ago, something like that?
No, it's more than 20. It was more than 20 years ago because it was in Chicago.
Oh, right. In Chicago, we had one of those killer hot summers where people were literally dying. It was like crazy hot. And I went downstairs because I lived right above them. I went downstairs and it's so hot that they're laying on the kitchen floor because it was tile. And they're just laying there all day. And I was like, you know what? I've had it. I don't care what it costs. We're renting a car and we're going and we're buying air conditioners. And Frances and her husband, Tom, go, we have air conditioners. There's like 3 of them in the closet in the hallway. And I was like, are you kidding me? I think by myself in a frenzy of crazy heat, went to the closet, pulled up, and they were huge air conditioners. They were like off for offices, pulled them all out, threw them in windows. And then like a half hour later, she calls me when I'm upstairs in my apartment with the air conditioner in, and she goes, oh my God, it's so much cooler in here. They work. And I was like, you know what? It wasn't an experiment. Like we knew they would work if we put them in and plugged them in. This isn't a eureka moment, but I couldn't believe it because I was like, why didn't you guys put these in? They literally said, well, by the time you put them in, then it's like fall. And I was like, are you kidding? It's fucking June. And she just did it again.
I just did it again. I had air conditioners here, Jackie. I've lived in this apartment for 20 years. I finally decided, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get air conditioners. I'm going to put them in the bedrooms.
They have been in boxes in the apartment for 3 months. That's why I didn't go to her house for her anniversary, because I was objecting. This was a protest. I was like, until those air conditioners are respected, okay, until you respect them and the labor that went into them, I will not participate.
Right. I gotta say, I may relate a little bit to Frances. Do you have ADHD?
Well, I just started therapy and I'm trying to find out if I do have it, because it is a concern, because my daughter believes that she has ADHD. We started having conversations about masking and learning how to mask as what it's a form, because it doesn't get identified in women, and especially young Black women.
Right.
Because we are told to behave a certain way. And that is what I did. I went my entire life, I went to Catholic schools and I learned how to behave.
Right.
I learned how to turn in my work. I was a straight A student. I read all very well, but I do have a form of dyslexia that I understand now more than I did many, many years ago. It is very difficult for me to focus. I've been practicing Buddhism for 33 years because of it.
Wow. And, it's very real. And there are more women over 40 all the time now who are being diagnosed with ADHD. Diane Wingert is a former therapist turned life coach. She has a whole podcast about ADHD over a certain age. And it's real. But at the same time, it's kind of a superpower because you're able to kind of change on a dime, right? Like you're able to move on to something else. You can be creative. You can really respond to things and be in the moment. But oh my God, if you ask me to go to the post office and send you something in an actual envelope with a stamp on it, just assume it is not coming.
Jackie, I love you. I love you. That is me. That is me. And yet you can ask me to produce something and create something, and I can put my mind to it, and I will, the path, entrepreneurially, business wise, I can figure that shit out like that. I'll be like, this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is what we're going to do. And I can keep on that plan and do that. But small, simple things like that, very difficult.
Yeah. Just everyday tasks that somebody, thank God for technology, right? Because like go to the bank.
Yeah.
That's the dumbest thing. I'm not going to the bank. I'm not physically depositing a check. And it's like this reaction in me that's like, no, I can't do it. It feels so stupid, but it's real. So we're like kindred spirits.
That's me. That is me.
But let me tell you something though. But see, Jackie, you're not also old fashioned. Old Grandma Frances over here, she doesn't believe in internet banking.
Oh, so
She
that's
she has to go to her branch. She won't even go to another branch of the same bank, right?
Oh, that's amazing.
You got to go to her branch to deposit checks.
That's how I know where the money is. That's where my money is. My money's like that one, not like the other one.
They don't use Pinkertons to actually take cash from building to building anymore. Like that's
Don't trust it. Don't trust it.
That's so funny. So do you have your favorite teller at the bank?
You know what? Actually, my husband does the bank.
He usually does the bank.
Oh.
And he does, and I haven't done laundry in 24 years.
Really?
Oh, no.
She didn't know about the corn shortage. I had to tell her.
I didn't. I had no idea. Because I go to the store. Here's my thing. It's not that we have defined roles. We have defined jobs in our home.
Mm.
And we do too, yeah.
And so, my thing is I go get the groceries when I'm out. I get quarters. And I'm like, how come I can't get quarters for my husband? I need laundry done. This is a problem.
I mean, like, you haven't heard about this? It's been
there was a
months.
full-on shortage. Like, those banks that wouldn't take all of your change suddenly were like, bring us your change.
It's really crazy.
So, Angela, I was doing a little research on both of you. Actually, I don't even know if you remember this, but back, we collaborated before together.
Yeah, I know that I know we know this woman.
I was the founding editor of a website, a parenting site for Warner Brothers back in 2009. Mom Logic.
Yes. And it was,
yes. And the funny thing is you both came to do videos for, I forget where we were.
House, right? It was
at somebody's house.
Like off of Sunset or like in that area.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. And I was the producer, one of the producers on it. And then they were like, Jackie, go into hair and makeup and do these videos. And so they threw me in. I had never done anything like it before, except for, maybe the Salem State College news that I did, back in 1992. But I'd never done anything like it. And I was like obsessed. It was you guys and Garcelle Bouvet. And we were all in a video together talking about kids and cars and other, parenting bullshit topics.
Yes.
But so funny. So anyway, this has been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
But in doing some research, I mean, obviously I've been following you. I subscribed to Me Time and I was watching that when you had that show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But Angela, one of the things that you mentioned recently was, what was it? World Mental Health Day. And you were talking about anxiety. Actually, back in 2019, I saw on Twitter. And so how has that, now that we know Frances has ADHD because, I'm a doctor, I just diagnosed her. But how does your anxiety fit into everything that you both do?
Well, I have panic disorder. And so I've taken medication, Xanax, for like 13 years. Frances will tell you I'm a very good medication taker. She's horrible at it.
Well, back to the ADHD, right?
She's just horrible at it. I'm a model patient. And it's one of those things where like she's very, very understanding and very, like we definitely, I would say, think maybe part of it thinking about like how's our relationship developed or change over the years is one thing is when you love and respect somebody for the things that are their limits, even if they're not always clear on their limits, there are moments when I think maybe I can do something and what that is really me fighting me internally and going, you should be able to do this. Just try, just do this. And Frances will be like, we don't need to do this because it's not anxiety that comes out of a situation. It just sort of happens when it doesn't need to be there. Also, I can be very bad about noticing what's going on in my own body. And Frances will be like, hey, you're having trouble breathing. You know, I'm like,
Right.
what do you mean? And so I think that knowing that and being able to talk about it and be able to say to her at different points, I just don't feel right. And having somebody just not say, oh, we'll push through it, or, you know, you just exercise or whatever, like the things that people say,
Yes.
just sort of accept it, and really not in a, like, it's something that you have to tolerate way, but like, it's a part of who I am, you know, and
not only just accept
yeah,
it, respect it.
that's how I want to say it. And there's no like judgment, or there's no, you know, you shouldn't be this way. And I think I have found it amazing because I'm very like at peace with saying that and talking about it, that when I said that publicly, I didn't think of it as revealing anything, but we got so much feedback from people that was all positive, you know, saying, thank you for saying that, because there is so much stigma around these kinds of issues and misunderstanding, and about medicating for them, you know, and
we're supposed to push through, right?
Right. You're supposed
especially
to
as women, the attention issue, the anxiety issue, depression,
Yeah,
any
just
of that
focus.
stuff that comes on. Yeah. Like meditate and your world will be better.
It's a fundamental, like, a lot of times it's just sort of a misunderstanding of the situation. And it happens in places that you would think it wouldn't necessarily, like every doctor I see. I recently almost cut off part of my finger, and because I'm very bad in the kitchen. It's a whole, you just had to deal with a little bit of it today, but it's a horrible place for me. So when they ask what medications you take, and that's the only, that and Benadryl, you know, and every single doctor I've ever met with who isn't my doctor, my psychiatrist, says, oh, why do you take this? And I always say, well, first, because it's none of your business. And then I do like this, and they're like, but I mean, do you know what this medication does? I was like, yeah, I'm educated on it, and educated, and I think a fairly intelligent human being, and I've been taking it for 13 years, so I'm all of that. And then you get a lecture about it, and they're like, well, what makes you anxious? And I'm like, well, see, if it was something that made me anxious, it wouldn't be a disorder. We'd call that a normal reaction.
Right. Now,
So,
that's an excellent point. I want to sit on that for a second, because we all have, especially now, right? COVID and elections, anxiety is flowing through our blood like never before, right? There's so much going on. But for many of us, it's a normal reaction to what's
that is
happening.
Not a disorder.
Yes.
Like when and there have been many days when I've woken up, because I'm having, especially the closer we get to the election and things like that, I'm not sleeping as well. I'm not whatever. And I thought about asking my doctor about increasing my dosage, but then, and I talked to him, and he's like, he's like, almost every patient I've had has asked me to increase their dosage of whatever medication they're on. And some people you do, and some people you know, you don't. And I was like, well, I'm not asking, because the reality is I'm supposed to be anxious about this. You know what I mean? Like, this is anxiety you're supposed to feel. And not that you like it, but the reality is, if this isn't making you anxious, I actually question what's going on with you, because this is anxiety producing. And that anxiety is actually your body and mind connection way of letting you know that things aren't right, and that things have to change, and that they have to change, and the changes that you can make for you. And that may mean things like going to bed a lot earlier than you're used to, or napping, or journaling, or trying to figure out other ways to deal with some anxiety that you're not accustomed to having. But you can't, this pill does not get rid of politics or racism or, you know, a pandemic. I say it every day to people, because I think we tend to forget this. No matter what's going on with you right now, I need you to always say to yourself, pandemic. That the reality is, we are living through something that people haven't lived through in this country in our lifetimes.
Right.
That we are going through something that the last time it happened anywhere close to this was 1918. You know,
and nobody is alive to tell us to be our Sherpas for this.
I think that when you relieve yourself of I have to get rid of this anxiety, for me at least, and looking at it and go, no, you're going to be anxious. So that's the kind of anxiety where maybe a little more exercise, or some exercise, might actually help, you know, because it's anxiety that is natural, that makes sense. When you have a disorder, you wake up anxious for no reason. Suddenly your heart is racing. It's a physical manifestation. And the reason you medicate for it is because those chemicals are harmful to your body. Like having that kind of, what is cortisol, all those things just like rushing through your body when they don't need to be repeatedly isn't good for you. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for all your internal organs. So yeah, so you you medicate, and even in some cases, like in my case, to stop that from happening. But that doesn't stop normal anxiety. Like this, you should be anxious.
Right.
Not forgive yourself. That's a natural reaction to if even just one of these things was happening. If we just had a pandemic, if we just had an economic crisis, if we just had a really contested election, if we just had massive, it seems like almost weekly police shooting of unarmed Black people, if we just had the level of disagreement we had in the country, if we just had climate problems and the fact that California is still on fire, any one of those things, not to take into even account your own personal life issues, like your relationships, your job, your desires, dreams, goals, any one of those things would be enough, but they're all happening at once. And that means everything is affected. So when my friends talk to me about, like, I have a friend who, he and his ex-partner, they live together with their kids, and it's awful, right? They're at each other's throats. And he was talking about, I was like, can I tell you something? There's a number of problems here that you keep forgetting. Pandemic. Those kids are home all day in the house with you. That's not normal.
Nope.
This is why nobody's getting along.
Right.
Normally, you've got space and time away from each other and to be with other people.
Each other.
Yeah, and you don't now. And I'm like, and you are in each other's face 24/7. And at times when you're trying to get stuff done. And so give everybody a break, including yourself, and be like, you know what? Some days I'm just not going to be my best me. I'm going to really try, but some days I'm just not going to be.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of people who are rushing to divorce right now because they're stuck together. You just want to say, just put the pause button.
Yeah.
Like you can hate each other as much as you want, but just like, hold on, because you might get through it on the other side. Now, you are so self-aware because anxiety makes life difficult. Yeah. You can't just breathe through it and be on the other side. Two things. Number one, how do you know within yourself when what you're feeling is natural versus your anxiety happening?
I would say on the surface, they feel the same in a lot of ways, right? For me, there's this very physical manifestations. My heart races. It's hard for me to focus. I'm irritable. Everything annoys me. I'm tired.
Wait, that's me all the time.
I know, right? Me too. Like I'm very easily irritated. Like, so I think what I have to do is sit down, and I literally have to, sometimes I just make a list even, you know what I mean? Like I sit down and I have to be very sort of thoughtful about the moment in the day and be like, okay, like with this not sleeping well, I was really sleeping well. I was so proud of myself, and I was so happy. And then it was like a week ago, Francis, or 2 weeks ago, maybe, it just started happening where I'm up, at 4 and like, and my heart's racing a little and I'm panicked and I'm like picking up the phone tentatively. So I just have to sit down and think of the things what is it that I'm anxious about? And if I can name things, then that right away tells me that that isn't the disorder. Those things are making me anxious. That's one way that's helpful. But I've also tried to take note of the times when I'm not anxious. Like, because of some of the things that they've done, like the rent moratorium and the stimulus and the unemployment money, I had to say to myself when I was sitting down and I was feeling anxious and I just felt like I couldn't focus. And then I was thinking, okay, but this is interesting. I'm not anxious about money, which usually a lot of times I am. Why am I not anxious about money? And I went, oh, we were already set up that we were doing things online, right? Like, so our work schedule didn't change when this all went down. And then on top of that, we took our tour that we were going to do physically and made it virtual.
Right.
And so we got a little bit of a breather to get through those before things were really gelling with rent moratorium and with the stimulus money. And so I was like, take note of that and celebrate. At least at this point, you are lucky and blessed enough that is not the thing because the thing about money is there's almost nothing you can do about it generally. It is what it is. And if you can't find a way to get help from somebody, sometimes those problems, you can't just sort of good attitude your way out of it.
Yeah, you can't think your way out of it.
And I find if I talk about things, if I say the thing I'm scared of, it does lose its power. And I try to think, one of my strategies is I think, what's the absolute best thing and what's the absolute worst thing? What's the absolute best thing that could happen? I mean, crazy best, like never going to happen. Like Oprah's going to come over here and go, it's you and Francis. What have I been doing all these years? I'm giving you the Oprah key. Get everything. But you know what else isn't going to happen? Hollywood isn't going to come together and go, we've decided that Frangela can't work. That's not going to happen either. So,
and you don't have to move into Frances's unair conditioned apartment.
Exactly. See, there's got to be a shade tree that's better.
Let me tell you something. I've set up and thought about it many a day.
No, and this is the thing. But what I say to myself there is that I do have some place to go. Like, yes. Even though a lot of my family isn't in California, they're my family, Frances and Tom and Abby. So, and they have a place to go too. So in remembering that, like, I think it can be very easy to, and some of us aren't as fortunate, obviously, through no fault of our own and feeling alone. But I think that is when you go, okay, what can I do if I feel alone? Is there something I can do about that? What do I need? What am I lonely for? How can I find that? And get the help. I'm a big believer in therapy. I think that everybody should be in therapy, and not because you have a problem, but because it is a unique space that everybody has a right to. That is absolutely a gift if you can do it. And now with things like Talkspace and much more affordable forms of therapy, I encourage everyone to give themselves that gift of a place that's just about you. With another human being, because that, and if it's about them, that's not the right therapist.
Clearly.
But like, to me, those things are really important.
Well, and especially when we're constantly giving to other people. A lot of my listeners don't have kids, and you don't have to have kids to be somebody who's been nurturing other people, and because that's how we're programmed, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, but Frances, as far as Angela's anxiety, because there are people listening who are like, yes, that's me. I'm anxious. I didn't even realize it's anxiety. I've just been so stressed and knowing the difference. And so I'm going to put some resources in the show notes for sure if you're listening and you want to get some help. But having a friend who doesn't judge and who understands and who doesn't try to like positive think it away. Frances, how are you able to, is it just who you are naturally? How are you able to kind of come up and lift her up?
Let me start by this admit. Yeah, when you have someone in your realm that isn't like you, first, I think our first thing is we try to fix that person. Yes. Or we try to offer solutions. And let me tell you, what I learned, like, for example, going to the airport, Angela and I, it's a joke because I am the person, before 9/11, I was the person who showed up at the airplane 5 minutes before it takes off. Every time. That is what I believed in. It was a thought, it's a belief system that only suckers went to the airport and waited. That is for suckers.
They're the same people who get gas before they actually need it, right?
That's Eleanor Frances Callier.
I can't with it. I'm the Malcolm X. You keep 3/4 in that car at all times. You don't know when you're going to have to run. You may have to run at any moment.
So I partner with a person who needs to be at the airport
3 hours
2 hours before the flight.
Yes.
And so what that required out of me was change.
We compromised.
And we compromised. We met in the middle.
So we're there an hour 15 to hour and a half early.
That's right.
And we do the things we can, like pre-check and all that, to sort of get through, because the way I deal with a lot of my anxieties, I take control over the things I can take control over, right?
Right.
So I hate the airport because it's frankly one of the places where people behave the worst. And it's just stressful and awful. And I'm like, the one place you need clocks, there's never a clock. It drives me crazy. So I would show up early. I pack the night before. I have a packing list. This is a person who throws panties in a bag and is like, oh, I'm done. We're completely opposite in this way, Yeah. And so part of what that helps me do is I go, I have to let go. I can control me, but I cannot control her. And she, in her kindness and love for me, tries to meet me at the places that she can, so that to eliminate some of that anxiety, or at least help me with it, Yeah.
And you know what? It's good for me. In the other opposite direction, it's good for her. And so we try to balance each other. And I think that that's every relationship, be it professional, romantic, parental, work relationship. When you let go of your vision and control and need to control the situation for it to be exactly as you envision it, That is like improvising. When you don't try to write the scene, but you allow what is naturally occurring and intuitively happening. And we look at this and we go, how can we serve the need of the moment to get this produced, to get it done, to perform the thing, take care of the people in the moment versus how I want it.
Right.
That is a consideration and mindfulness of everything, not just us, because we also have to be mindful of the other people that we're dealing with and what have you. So it's all of those things, and when we do try to do that as a work unit.
It meant so much to me. One day we were on a plane, we were touring, and we sat down and we got in our seats. And Frances, you turned to me and you went, okay, I get it. You're absolutely right. The worst times are boarding and getting off the plane. Those are the worst parts. Cause I'm always like, get on the plane as quickly as you can. Like, just get into that seat, right? Cause I'm like, that is the hell. The hell of people panicking about their luggage and everything else and being rude and squeezing past everybody. I just want that part over. And one day you were like, no, I get it now. You're absolutely right. It was like, you got to get through this part.
Angela experiences people and moments very differently than I do. Angela's very aware. She can hear other people's conversations.
I eavesdrop a lot.
I'm not that person. So if I'm walking around, and here's an example of us. We were going into a comedy club one night. Apparently there was a line down the street and around the corner.
It was a huge line to get in. Ridiculously long.
I walk in the door.
Just walks right through it.
Walk through the door.
Through the line.
It's just the way I am. You
didn't notice it at all. I didn't even
notice it.
You didn't notice the line.
No. There are 300 people in line. You just walked through.
And I bet they let you through.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
and
she has
that
air too.
Send the waiter over.
Because when you walk in like you own the place, the world really just is like, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't know that you own the place.
And
Here you go.
And I'm not trying to own the place. I'm literally focused on what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah. And I tend to be much more like I eavesdrop whether I want to or not. So it's hard sometimes when I'm in areas where that's going on. It can be hard for me to focus. And I literally will have to say to people, 1 second, she's dumping him. I just need to hear this.
Well, I bet you get a lot of comedy from that.
Yeah. Stuff I don't want to say. Yeah. But yeah. And so that stuff is very, you just recognize each other's, like there's certain things I'm better at and certain things she's better at. And we divvy up the jobs accordingly or try to, you know?
Right.
And there are times when you can't do it. Like there are times when I'm like, look, I can't today. I cannot deal with that person today. Could you deal with this person? Mm-hmm. And we give each other, we call them asks, like, I need an ask. I need you to deal with this person today because I don't want to be, they're going to get heat that they don't deserve. It's actually heat for somebody, for the world. And I just don't think I can be trusted.
Right.
And so
and we can be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the best. What you're doing, there are a lot of friends who get into business together, who do creative projects together. And sometimes it's nice and sometimes it's a shit show. And so the way you look at your relationship is indicative of probably how you live with everybody else in your life. And imagine if we all saw each other for the true human beings that we are and gave a little bit of grace and space for that person to be who they are.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like
and they are full of gifts. And stop trying to change people. Accept them for who and what they are, and they will flourish. We all will flourish. We benefit.
And people change. Leave people the ability to change and grow and change their mind. But I would say we do things like when one of us has to give the other one, maybe we feel like we need to give each other a note that maybe we know that will make the person a little defensive. We do this whole thing where we literally act it out. I'll call her and be like, hey, Frances, can I talk to the Frances who's meditating, who's her best self, who knows every yoga pose, who doesn't use gendered language? Can I talk to her for just a second?
And I'll be like, sure. And I'll put down the phone. I'll be like, hey, Frances. And she's like, hey, namaste.
And like we do the like footsteps and everything.
Yes.
Like I was just juicing. What's up? What do you need? Hey, could you be on time today?
And can you receive that? Can you receive that better if when you go through this whole exercise?
Yeah, because we're role playing now, right? That was she's being a character, so she can go. Yeah, one of my favorite games we used to play was the passive aggressive game. Like try to out passive aggressive each other. It's such a good tension reliever. Like when you're feeling tense, we're comedians, obviously, but I think if you can figure out a way to laugh in any moment, you can get through that moment. But you got to figure out a way to that laugh. And usually it means being willing to make fun of yourself. Right away, when you do that, you break up a little bit of your ego down, like in a good way. Like you take away that part that maybe gets in the way of you hearing or seeing what's going on. And so I think in doing that, that's one, and we quite literally play act that out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because you know what? Angela knows me better, and I can say that she knows me better than my husband. Angela can tell you what I want to eat. She can tell you what degree I want something at, what I want to, you know what I mean? She can tell you the fine things about me. But the reality is, it's like being able to laugh at yourself and laugh with each other will solve 80% of your issues.
Yeah.
To be able to just be able to laugh at yourself and not take yourself seriously and not get wrapped up in your position or your thinking about whatever it is that is turning you into a crazy fucking monkey.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So, Frances, you had put something on Facebook. It was a comedian said some things.
Oh, yes.
And that, and specific people are like, I was so offended. What are your thoughts on that? Would that be the answer? Just taking ourselves less seriously?
No, I don't think so. Because we have been college touring people, the reality is society changes. Mm-hmm. And morals change and viewpoints and point of views change. We had a class of comedians that were all men from the 70s into the 2000s. 30 years of men establishing what is funny. White cis men. Girl, tell it. Yeah. Men establishing what is funny, what we talk about, how we dress, the way we look, the perspectives that got on television. And then they became the executives that said yes to you and me. Okay?
That's cancel culture. That's to me, that was the cancel culture. We all got canceled. Like, to me, we have a different view of this. You know, for me, we get very confused, I think, in this country about free speech. Free speech does not mean consequence or reaction free speech. Free speech means the government is not supposed to be able to arrest you or tell you you can't say something. Now, as a Black person, I can tell you I don't have that relationship with the government. I don't have free speech. I don't have that relationship with police officers. I've seen white kids have it, but I don't. So I think for me, when I hear cancel culture, it hits me in this place of it seems like it's those people reacting to no longer having say about what we all get to, the fact that now they have to share even one slot with a woman or a woman of color or a differently able person or LGBTQIA person. Like the fact that now that we dare make the world aware that we exist, it bothers me because I'm like, look, this is the deal. They didn't get canceled. Nothing, these people exist. They didn't die. The world decided, has tasted discernment. The world decided, or parts of the world decided that they were no longer interested in what they had to say, or because they didn't like the things they were saying. And because of social media now, we're more aware of what people say and do than we were before. You didn't know what every set Jerry Seinfeld did was, unless you went to go see it or you bought the album, right? So now you're seeing those clips everywhere, they're tweeting or whatever. I get to react to that. And part of my reaction is I can say I don't like it. I can show I don't like it by not buying it or participating in it. I have the right to that. In fact, it's taste and discernment. It's not canceling. It's like, but suddenly when cis heterosexual white men get told, look, you don't get to masturbate in front of people, suddenly he's been canceled. Right. And it's like, no.
People standing up and saying, no, you will not treat us like this.
And I don't have to go and accept and pay my money or spend my time watching you say anything. This is why we respond to all of our fans. Time is the most valuable resource any of us have. We can't create it. We can't change it. So when people give you their time and their money, that's a big thing. And I believe if your thing is you want the most people possible to buy your product, then maybe you need to think about what to sell to them instead of just arguing that I don't have the right to not hear you. I absolutely have the right to not hear you. Absolutely have the right to say, I'm not interested in what this person has to say because they're a bigot and I don't need to waste my time with that.
And not to get into politics, but you see it in Trump right now, which is until you appeal to a larger group of people, you're going to be stuck with the group you got.
Wait, say that again. Say that again, Frances.
Until you appeal, your message appeals to a larger group of people. You are stuck with the people you got. So be happy. This is my thing. I don't want to hear you arguing about being canceled. If you are appealing to your base and they like your message, that is what you're doing.
Yeah.
So why question it? If you want a bigger audience, then you have to look at appealing to a larger audience.
Right. And it drives me crazy. Like Bill Maher complaining over and over again about not college kids and you should let anybody speak at campus. Let me explain to you. First of all, they're not kids. Most people in college are adults. I'm sick of white people not being adults until it's convenient. Number one. Number two, if you think there's a single American who doesn't know that there's racism or what a racist slur is, or that, let me tell you something about racists. They're not particularly imaginative and they don't hip up with the times. There's no new messaging from the Third Reich. They've stayed on point. So if you think that people aren't missing out on something, I didn't hear these people, none of these people seem to care if anybody has a broader education in any other way. They don't seem to care if they have any idea what's going on with ableist, issues or with different authors from different ethnicities or countries or whatever. But suddenly the dominant power holding group is like, this isn't fair to cancel people. I'm like, canceling or saying, you know what? Because this is the thing, I don't like peanut butter. I don't. That is rare. A lot of people love peanut butter and I don't have an allergy. I just hate it. I get to not like peanut butter. I'm not disrespecting peanut butter or the companies that make it by not buying it. And if the peanut butter companies want Angela's money, they have to figure out a way to get me to like peanut butter. Suddenly they act as though, and Bill Maher's the one that drives me because he talks about it all the time. You haven't changed your routine in 40 years. You're saying the same stuff. You're surprised that less people want to hear it. That's on you. And you don't have to be for everyone. You can be for the niche you're in if you want to. But if you want to be for more people, it's not about we have to change because we owe you our attention.
Right. And it's marketing 101. I mean, look at Coke or Pepsi. Like they don't advertise the way they did in the 70s because we are different people. And so if you're not willing to evolve your comedy to what's out there now, then what do you expect?
Thank you. And here's the thing. You don't get this idea that, and I object to hear when people say, I told this kind of jokes in the beginning to get started. Let me tell you what jokes we've never told. You are not going to find an anti-Semitic joke because I don't think that's funny.
No, you're not going to find a homophobic joke.
No, you don't have to do that. Have I used some words that I wish I hadn't used 20 years ago? Yes, but I own that and I don't use them now. And it's not necessarily that I need to appeal to everyone, but I also know that part of life, putting yourself out, not everybody's going to like you and they don't have to. Nobody owes you that. The entitlement behind that, it's astounding to me. I'm like, people get to not like you. They get to not like your art or your work. They get to not want to listen to you. That they don't owe you that.
As a Black woman in America, it is not my job here to puppet white male comedians' safety. That is not a group that I need to take up for. They have had the floor forever and still do.
I look at them and I'm like, it has never bothered you. We've been in writers' rooms all over the place where white men are allowed to write for everyone, but I'm only allowed to write for Black people.
And Black women, probably.
Somehow they are the neutral. They're the only ones who are capable of objectivity or of knowing another culture when they almost always don't know anything about any other culture. And so we get brought in for the low price to do the screen of the work, to make sure it isn't racist, sexist, or stupid or unhip. And I'm like, or you could have just hired us at the beginning and then you wouldn't have to do that. But like that, to me, the thing about cancel culture is I'm like, this is the deal. Nobody owes you their attention. You have to earn that, and you have to show people, you have to give them a product they want. And if you don't, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're not comedians who get off a stage and go, the audience sucks. Maybe you're just not for these people. I remember we did a show with another team. It was a college show. And they literally asked the college students, how many of you know who Andrew Dice Clay is? One kid raised their hands. You know what they did? They did their 15 minutes of Andrew Dice Clay material. And I was like, but why ask if you're going to do it anyway?
Right.
And it didn't do well because the kids hadn't seen it, hadn't heard of it, didn't know what it was, and didn't care for it. And they and then complaining about kids and the college students, and they just don't know what's going on. I'm like, we were emceeing a night, and this guy told jokes about getting married. He was engaged and getting a mortgage. And these are college students. And he was like, I don't think your intro was very good. I was like, our intro? Yeah, we didn't warn them. You're not going to have any interest in the next 20 minutes. You're right. We did not do that.
Isn't that funny, though, that the onus is not on the person who's not funny and not relatable, but it's always on
us as an audience.
Yeah, but also on women.
That's exactly it. It's women. It's like, why aren't you responding to the thing I've worked on? Like, because I don't like it. And I get to not like it. It doesn't mean I'm uneducated. It doesn't mean I'm afraid of it. It doesn't mean that I'm ignorant. It doesn't mean that I don't want to be confronted. You're not confronting me with anything new. This may come as a shock, but we're very well acquainted with you. You know,
right.
Like very well acquainted with you.
And just because you keep on asserting your joke line 5, 6, 7, 8 times, it wasn't funny the first, and it definitely isn't funny the 7th, 8th, or 9th time.
And that's the deal. Where I go with you on this, and I agree, is that we seem to be in a period of time, I don't want to say we've lost it, where we forget to give people the benefit of the doubt. Where we do not take a moment and ask ourselves, wait a minute, did I misunderstand this? That especially when you're talking about like tweets and writing. The thing about writing is the words look very different. We've had this problem for a while. I think this period of time, this presidency has exacerbated it. But you really are at a point where it does help, if you can, step back and ask. Don't assume, even if it looks clear, go, hey, it looks like you were saying this. Is this what you were saying?
That's a great point.
The chance to tell you, if they go, no, I'm sorry, because often like we use words differently. Like Frances is very precise in her language to the point where she'll use a word exactly the way it's the definition, but in our culture, the connotations, she doesn't have that baggage on the word. Like she said recently, you're saying how somebody had lost their shine, which sounds like a negative thing, right? Like they're no longer shiny, they're no longer new. But what she means by that is you're seeing the real person in a good way. And I know that because I know her, but if you don't know her, you might have thought that she was saying, so sometimes I'm guilty of it too, you know, that instant reaction. And just go, wait, let me back up. Let me ask this person, is this what they meant to say? Did I misunderstand it? And then if they go, no, I meant to say that women shouldn't work. Women shouldn't vote. I'll be like, okay, you're a jerk. And then you can go on. But like,
now it's on.
Now it's on, but or not. And I'm a strong believer in people who aren't worth your time aren't worth your time.
Yeah. So I could talk to you all day and night. I have one question before we go, and it's a little bit lighter, but shit, you both look so good.
Thank you, Jackie. You look great. I was looking at you. You're gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Everything about you is gorgeous.
Thank you. But I know that just by looking at you, you've both done some positive things. Like I knew you then, you were both gorgeous then, back in 2009. But now, what are you both doing?
I will start. I woke up about 2 years ago. My weight has fluctuated for the last 20 years. Yeah. And I'm just put it all out there on Front Street. When I was 20 pounds overweight, I thought I was horrifically overweight. And then cut to me being 100 pounds overweight, going, what was wrong with me in my head, right? Everything from body dysmorphia, all those things. We could go down the list. But I woke up 2 years ago, very ill, not happy, not mentally happy, not thriving. Also, I had one of the worst bouts of writer's block that I've ever experienced. It was like week after week after week. It was like carving concrete. There was no flow. And I decided to change my eating habits. I was going to figure out, the first question I had was, why am I hurting myself?
Yeah.
Why am I hurting myself? Why am I eating things that I know do not contribute to a better me? Why am I drinking in ways that I know are not contributing to a better me? Why am I thinking thoughts? Getting to the mental.
Yes.
to things that are not contributing to my highest. I'm hurting myself.
Yes.
And I wanted to really desperately, I wanted to stop hurting myself. And then a year after that, I stopped drinking and I stopped eating meat. And because I started very small and working just from those things and going, I want to stop hurting myself. I just want to stop hurting myself. How do I, and taking small things. And I mean, girl, Jackie, so slow,
Yeah.
at a snail's pace. And now I'm able to think, for the first time in my life, I've never enjoyed exercising. But for the first time, I never believed people in my life that people believed that they enjoyed it.
Right.
I couldn't see it. I couldn't conceive of it. And now I'm there.
You could see it. It was like you were shedding all of the things that you were hiding. Like I actually feel, and take this with a grain of salt because I don't know you all that well.
That's a really good way to say it, I think.
But I feel like Frances, maybe you were hiding in some way, came out. And it was like, watch out, because we were I'm blinded by you. I sound like I'm like sucking up, but there was a shift. I could feel a shift, and not just in your appearance, but just in yourself. And it's so relatable. It's so relatable in that we're like, I deserve this cocktail. I deserve this sugar that's poisoning my body. I deserve to lie on the couch and watch Schitt's Creek 5,000 times.
Yeah, exactly, Jackie.
You know, and shifting that into, I deserve to feel happy in my body and in my skin and who I am. And I deserve to move my body and eat healthy foods. And you can see that in you. And so congratulations, because there are so many people who are still in that place, and we beat ourselves up. We're not perfect. And I love that you pointed out the slow, because nobody wants to hear that. No. Nobody wants to hear that it took 2 years and that the drinking happened, you stopped that after a year, and that you stopped slowly eating meat or whatever it is. Nobody wants that. The answers are right here in front of us. And yet we don't want the answer if it doesn't mean I look the way I want to look tomorrow.
Girl, hallelujah. Isn't that the truth? Angela and I talk about it, personally, but the reality is that patience is something that you develop. It is not something that we wake up. You don't wake up the first day and go, arugula salad is the most delicious thing I ever had in my life. But that is what I do now. And that is a mental change and a connection. And I will tell you really quickly, my personal family medical history. My mother and father are both dead. My father died at 51. My father had a stroke at 43 that paralyzed him on one side of his body. My father was an amazing musician, could never play again, and then died 7 years later. My mother had ovarian cancer. She died of ovarian cancer a month before my child was born. I have a horrible medical family history. And I've had high blood pressure and been a diabetic since 40. For 11 years, sort of addressing it,
right? But
not addressing it, not really addressing it, not really paying attention to it. You must.
Yeah. And it's not a destination.
No.
That's the thing, is we're like, oh, weight loss, or I'm going to feel better. And then I get there and I can just go back. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. You didn't gain the weight in one night. I don't know why we think we'll all lose it in one,
Right.
like.
Did you have a similar circumstance?
Yeah, I think that I tend to have a very bad mind-body connection. Like, I will get injured and not know I'm injured. It's not even a pain tolerance. Sometimes I feel like I just don't feel it. Like, I literally have found blood and been like, what's that? And then look, I'm like, oh, I'm bleeding. I think that's always been a problem for me. And I tend to be self-punishing. I tend to do things that are like overdo things. So the struggle for me has always been too much. It's either everything or nothing. I think it's familiar to a lot of us, But for me, it's very similar in this way. Like, I have been much smaller. I've been a little bit bigger, but really the pandemic and the lockdown were especially helpful to me in this way. It's a horrible thing that I absolutely wish hadn't happened and wasn't happening. But one thing that happened is, like, pretty soon into it, I started having all these symptoms that I knew what they were because I'd seen Frances have them. So suddenly, in my family, I don't have this same medical history because a lot of my family members are crazy and evil, and that seems to keep you alive. a lot longer. I don't know why, but the more crazy people you are, the more likely you are to live to 120. So
good to know. Noted.
Yeah, I mean, it's too late for you. You can't possibly, you're too
Damn
good
it.
a person. It was never going to happen. But other ways, you can do other things. But I felt horrible. And Frances, it's like with the heat thing, discomfort is a huge motivator for me. I hate being physically uncomfortable. So I was dizzy. I was very clearly, I was either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And then when I looked at the symptoms and I looked up this one day when I felt really awful and it lasted for 2 days, I immediately do the research. I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat like I'm a diabetic. I got testing stuff. I started testing my blood sugar and I just stopped. I've been eating like I have diabetes for the last 8 months. And if you do that, and here's the thing, for the first time in terms of losing weight and stuff, I haven't measured a single thing. I haven't counted a single point or calorie. I haven't thought about that at all. I've eaten because I need to eat, because I'm hungry, because or whatever. But I've eaten like somebody who has diabetes and I've lost weight. And I started exercising, but in typical Angela, I tried to not do, I tend to overdo it and hurt myself. So I had to set rules, because I was the kind of person where I'd go to the gym and I'd get on one treadmill and then I'd try to block off the one next to me so that I could get it programmed and ready so I could jump, because you can only be on it for like 45 minutes, right? So I could jump off of that one to get on the other one, because I like running and I was trying to run marathons on treadmills. So basically I started not counting my warm up and my cool down as part of my mileage, like just really, and I was in constant pain, but really trying to achieve like this, just being ridiculous. And I'm not trying to insult myself by saying that, but when I look at my own behavior, it's like, I don't like being uncomfortable, but I'm okay with making myself in pain. It makes no sense.
Right.
So I started eating like I had diabetes. And now the other night I thought about having some wine and I had a moment of fear that I was like, oh, but how will that feel? And I've never thought of that before. I've never sat down at a bar or at dinner and before I ordered a drink thought, how will it make me physically feel? I've just wanted it, and I've thought about the good feelings I would get from it. But I never thought, oh, will that hurt my stomach? Will that make me tired? Will that make me anxious? Will that make me... And I think being at Second City and having the work schedule I had these ideas that even if they were true are no longer true. I don't have that schedule anymore. But when you work at night, Chicago's a 4 a.m. bar town. You get in this habit. I really did believe that I had to drink to go to sleep.
Right.
I thought
something.
I was like, after a show, because you're kind of pumped and this, and then I was like, I gotta have a glass of wine or two, which turned into much more, obviously, or else I won't be able to go to sleep. And what I realized is that it's not true. That in fact, the alcohol makes it harder to sleep.
Yeah.
And maybe not at first, but it does. And so now, literally last night, I was thinking, oh, I could have a glass of wine. And I'm like, yeah, but is that going to mess up my sleep? And I'm already anxious right now and I don't want to, and I didn't want it.
Yeah. I love it. I just think that this place, this over 40 place, all the programming, like you got to have the drinks and you got to eat like, you're like, screw that. I know how I feel.
Yeah.
And we have to put ourselves first. We have to go, you know what? If I have red wine, I am sweating my ass off at 3:00 in the morning.
Exactly.
I do.
Exactly.
I cannot live like that anymore.
It's awful.
And admit of reality and maturation that we're not invited, because we all only want to deal with the first crust layer, which is do things that make us feel good because we deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like taking care of myself. I'm like, actually, this is like the ultimate form of selfishness in the best way possible.
Exactly.
I have decided to put myself first. And that means I am not going to do things that hurt Angela because I like Angela.
And even if that's inconvenient for others, how many times is someone like, you're not having a drink?
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Like, I'm sorry that my lack of alcohol is making you uncomfortable.
I'm a firm believer in get through the moment, right? And at different points in your journey, you may need to just get through the moment. And what I say is go to the bar, get yourself a tonic water, extra lime, and pretend it's a gin and tonic and tell people that if you have to. Take care of you. We're not always in a place where we can be that forward or that whatever. I told Frances, when you're feeling sensitive, I lie. People go, did you lose weight? If you're in a sensitive moment, go, no, girl, I don't think so. I just had some ribs. Doesn't lie. Get out of the moment. Like, take care of you,
Right.
Like, do the things you need to take care of you. Because as you just point out quite clearly, and I think lovely, that's their issue.
Yep.
You don't have to own their issue. What you do to your body does not affect anyone else.
Right.
Outside of smoking, maybe. So you take care of you. And if at times that means you can't you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to acknowledge it, or you don't want it put in your face, that is okay. I believe you do what you can do to help you in that moment. And if it's talk about it, talk about it. If it's not, don't.
And if somebody does not have an issue with their own feelings, whatever they are, they won't care.
You're right.
If you want a glass of wine at dinner and I don't, go for it. Like, I don't care.
I brought wine to a dinner and they were like, you're not having it? I was like, no, I don't drink right now. I'm not drinking right now.
Let me tell you something. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and one of the things that I really want to try to make sure of, we want to model eating well and eating well as a family, but I want to stay off of her plate. Stay out of her plate. I see so many women and so many of us in terms of how we eat and we engage in food is so wrapped up in so many other old things that were handed to us that weren't even ours.
Yep.
This whole what's everybody eating thing. It's like, if they're not having an appetizer, you don't. If they're not having dessert, it's like, dude, do you? And it's hard. I say that, but people will fight you on it.
Yeah.
People don't like a dynamic to change, even if they don't like the dynamic. They will fight to preserve something they don't like. My thing is, I'm a get through it bitch. So I'm like, I don't care what you have to do. If you have to lie, if you have to feign an injury to get out of the room, whatever you need to do for you, do it, because it's worth it. Because here's the thing. I just realized, I think it was yesterday even, I was looking at my face and I was like, oh, wow. I feel like some of these things are just now getting out of my system.
Yep. What did I tell you? Remember those years when we were young and you could stop drinking for a month and you look good a month, 30 days later?
Yeah.
Woo! I was like,
ooh, or just one night.
Yeah.
You know? 2
years later, I'm like, my skin is still dry from my liver, I think, is just starting to work again. I'm not kidding, Jackie, my metabolism just started.
Just icky, like I had like some body acne, right? Yeah. And like I noticed literally yesterday, I was like, oh my God, it's almost all gone. And I was
the toxins trying to leave your body.
Exactly.
And I was like, wow. Here's the thing, your taste, and there's a science here too, like your taste buds will change. If you start taking stuff out, what you'll notice is, and if for different people, different things work. And I feel like try things until you find something that feels like it works. And at some point you may have to change it. It may not work anymore. But what I notice is now I'm a little bit afraid to have certain things because I haven't had them in a long time. And I don't know how I'll react physically to it. And I'm like, I haven't had that in like 8 months. I don't want to feel bad just for a piece of cheese. It's not worth it. But I think it is also cutting yourself a break and figuring out where your places are. Just try to just do you and cut yourself some slack, dude.
Yeah. Be nice to you.
Yeah.
You know?
We were not raised that way in our generation. And now is the time. And so thank you both so much for sharing your hearts and your stories and all of that with me, because you're both such a great example of owning who you are even more as you move through this life. And so I'm inspired by you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Jackie.
Thank you so much for listening. Let me ask you 2 quick questions. Have you subscribed? It's easy to do and helps you get alerts when a new episode is up in your favorite podcast app. And have you shared it with a friend? That's the simplest way to help grow the show and help more and more women over 40 thrive. I really appreciate you pressing play today. I know you have a lot going on and it's not lost on me. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.